والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وبعد. Given our differences as human beings, sometimes it becomes difficult to interact with people just based on not even religious grounds, but even grounds of habit. So I personally choose who my friends are because we share interests, because we share visions and goals, and we have a lot of things similar and in common. But we have to understand that at times there will be instances where people will be different from the way we are. And we need to look into the life of the Prophet ﷺ and figure out how do we deal with people who may be different from us in terms of their habits, their interests, their likes, their dislikes, so that we can function as a human society, as a community, as rooted and grounded in the prophetic model as possible. So to give an example of this, the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum mentioned regarding the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that yes, he was a human being, so he would never eat everything because some things were not to his liking. But he made it a point never to make someone feel uncomfortable. At the same time, he made it a point never to criticize food. And this is very important. Sometimes we go somewhere where the diet, the type of food can be extremely different. And when we're there, it may be part of our habit where we criticize it. We may say, oh, this is so weird, this is so awkward, not realizing how offensive that can be to the host, how offensive that can be to the people. It comes in the Sahih, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was once with Khalid ibn al-Walid and Al-Fadl ibn Abbas, and they were at the house of Maymuna radiallahu ta'ala anha. And Hufeyd radiallahu anha, she comes from Najd, and she brings some food with her. She brings some butter, she brings some cheese, and then she brings something in Arabic what they call dab. Dab is kind of like a lizard. Not exactly, but it falls under that umbrella of a lizard. So it was a type of food that people used to eat that time. And not everybody, but people who, like shepherds and people who are more ordinary, who may not have been able to afford that type of higher class diet. So the food is presented over there. And now, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it's time to eat. So he takes some of the butter, he eats. He takes some of the cheese and he eats. But when it came down to the dab, that animal, he refrained from eating. He didn't eat. Rather, he was about to eat, and then one of his wives, radiallahu ta'ala anhunna, they reminded him that, listen, this is dab. And then immediately, kaffa yadahu, he resisted, he held back. And now, obviously, there were other Sahaba on the table who it was normal for them to eat it. So immediately, he clarified. And he said, let me tell you, look, لا أأكله ولكن لا أحرمه. I'm letting you know right now that I'm personally not going to eat this, but know that it is not haram fakuluhu. If you want, go ahead and eat it. And then he says, the reason I don't want to eat this, فَإِنَّهُ لَيْسَ مِنْ طَعَامِ أَهْلِ الْأَرْضِ لَيْسَ مِنْ طَعَامِ أَرْضِ. That it is not from the food that is from my land. So obviously he's saying this is not the food that I'm accustomed to, but I'll let you know that, listen, it's perfectly fine to eat this, so go ahead and eat it. But I myself, I will not eat it. There's so much to speak about in this hadith. Think about the way he was interacting with the Sahaba. If he wanted, he could have said, look, this is disgusting. I don't want to touch this. Just get this away from me. No, he never criticized food like that. He basically said, look, this is something that is not from the staple diet of my people. I'm not used to it. If you feel comfortable, please go ahead and eat it. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, Khalid ibn al-Walid, he felt so comfortable that he himself, he began eating in front of the Prophet ﷺ. And Nabi ﷺ never stopped him. Umar radiallahu ta'ala, later on, he was asked about this, and he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided this as a diet for many people, such as the shepherds, so let them eat it. And Nabi ﷺ never criticized. What's the one lesson that we can learn from this? There are going to be people, cultures, backgrounds. There's so many differences we're going to face as a community. Think about in the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they shared technically the same ethnicity, but the tribes were different. Their diets were different. Their backgrounds were different. And Nabi ﷺ learned to maybe not fully comply to it, but not be disrespectful with other people. The reason I'm saying this, oftentimes when we hear, oh, that's what those people eat, or that's how they dress, or that's how they speak, or that's what they do, then we begin to ridicule, we begin to become disrespectful, we begin to become extremely, critical of other people's cultures. Again, so long as it falls within the general principles of Islam, there's nothing wrong with it, then we should not criticize, because it's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that within the means, when things are fine, we should not criticize it. How many times we hear people say, oh, what type of food is this? You guys eat this? I mean, that's a very offensive comment that can hurt somebody and make them feel very uncomfortable. That's normal for them. Rather, like the Prophet ﷺ will say, listen, I'm not used to eating this, but it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I understand people have different approaches to this. So the lesson to take away from this is people will have different habits, different backgrounds, different approaches, not necessarily as Muslims, but as a cultural entity, but as their background, the way they grew up, and we have to learn to accommodate those differences. Otherwise, we are not following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Accommodation does not mean I comply to it and I make it part of my life. No, I am willing to accept that this is fine and this is their habit. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them in that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to practice upon the sunnah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the sunnah the model of our lives. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refine our character. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakumullahu khairan, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.